Toki, I closed the door. This is what happens. Hi, I'm sayakatcosplay and I hoard fabric. And yesterday I decided to get into my fabric stash and make myself a really cute little accessory piece of clothing skirt thing. It's a belted skirt, basically a belt with a skirt on it, and it's really cute, and it took me about an hour and a half to make it, and I'm going to show you how I did it. First step in making this skirt is to find yourself some fabric. I ended up using this eyelet lace that I had in my fabric stash and a lighter blue satin that I also had to line it because I didn't want it to be see-through. Although it's still fairly sheer, it's not completely see-through, but the satin is a little bit translucent, so this isn't like a skirt that you can wear with nothing underneath. This is something to wear over shorts or over leggings or something. It's kind of more of an accessory piece rather than an actual piece of clothing. So anyway, I found my fabric and then I figured out how long I wanted things and cut them to the proper size. I ended up just cutting this piece of fabric in half, and I ended up with two pieces of fabric that added up to about 90 inches long, which I would eventually pleat down to about 28 to 30 inches. After I cut the lace, I cut the lining to the same size just by laying the lace over the lining, and then I flatlined everything together. So I took it over to my machine and basted the two layers together so that I could work with these pieces without them bunching or getting all weird. If you're going to be working with multiple layers of fabric, I do recommend flatlining things. It makes everything so much easier, and they don't move, and they stay together, and it's great. So I flatlined everything, and then I was ready to start putting them together. Putting the skirt together is really super easy. It's basically just two rectangles sewn together. The rectangles I ended up French seaming along the seam that put them together because they are only connecting along one seam, and I put a French seam in because I didn't want any raw edges showing on any of this. So that back seam is French seamed. For those of you who are unfamiliar with French seaming, you put the right sides of the fabric out, you sew a seam about 3/8 of an inch from the edge, and then trim that seam and then flip the fabric around so that the wrong sides are facing out, and then sew that seam again so that the raw edges of the seam are encased and you don't get any nasty raw edges. After I French seamed that one seam, I then rolled hemmed the entire bottom and the two free edges. Again, I didn't want any raw edges showing, so I did about a 3/8 of an inch turn in and then another 3/8 of an inch turn in again for those rolled hem edges. Now it's time for the hardest part, pleating this thing. So I knew that the fabric was about 90 inches long and I needed to bring it down to about 28 to 30 inches. I wanted this to sit pretty high up on my natural waist, so this is going to be like a high-waisted skirt. So with each pleat, I ended up making each one about 1.5 inches long, and this would take it in about 3-4 inches. I'm not good at pleat math. Don't come for my pleat math. I ended up pleating the pleats about 1.5 inches long. I did this by hand and then pinned all the pleats in place. I ended up having to do the pleats a couple of times. This is usually just what happens with eye pleats. I'm not good at it. But I pleated it down. I ended up reversing the pleats at the back edge of the seam. So half the pleats go one way, half the pleats go the other way. And then for you, if you want to make a skirt like this, if you don't want to pleat it, you can just gather the fabric. I think gathering would have just been as good or better. I chose to pleat it, and then once I had pinned all the pleats in place, I sewed all the pleats in, sewed them down so that they wouldn't go anywhere, wouldn't move around, and basically got it ready to put the waistband on. Alright, waistband. To make the waistband, I basically just used the strip of fabric that I cut off the blue satin. So this was the edge along the fold, and I wanted a waistband about 1 inch wide. That was the width of my belt buckle that I had, so I want to make sure that the belt buckle would fit on the waistband. So I sewed one edge of the waistband basically to the raw edge of the pleats, and then I took it over to my ironing board to iron the edges of the waistband so that I could then sew the waistband shut. Last step is adding the belt buckle, and then I used the eyelet function on my machine to make the eyelets that I needed. What? Something fell. Great, yay, voiceover. Anyway, I made the eyelets, and that's the skirt. So it's really super easy. It was really fast. Like I said earlier, I made this in about an hour and a half. And it's a good way to have something new for my wardrobe that uses up fabric for my fabric stash. And I'll show you some of footage of this skirt in all of its finished glory. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions about how I made this or want to see me make other items of clothing, leave a comment down below what you'd like to see. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and bell notification for the next time I put up a new video. I'll see you folks in the next one.